Okay, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, and we really do thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Growing Up Too Fast, Addressing the Mental Health Challenges Facing Our Youth Today. We all know we don't have to watch the news too long to hear a story about how either the COVID pandemic or the opioid epidemic or something is affecting children, not to mention bullying in school. I mean, we could go on and on. All of the issues that our children and youth are facing today. It's truly heartbreaking. And we're really blessed to have our great panelists with us today to share on this topic. My name is Barbara Campbell, and I am the Executive Director of the Dalton Foundation, and we're a proud supporter of the relink.org project. We also have from our team today here, Mr. Bill Pica, who's our statewide data coordinator. I'm going to share just a brief few minutes about relink.org while everyone's joining in, and then turn it right over to our speakers. And Bill does all of our data for the relink.org project that I'm going to share, and he will help moderate our questions for today as well. The format for today will be, we'll have two speakers share, and then we'll go into a question and answer session. And my slide will not advance as I suspected. All right, so a little bit about relink.org. We were started back in 2017. It was initially in response to the opioid epidemic and identifying resources and helping family members help their loved ones navigate toward the help they need. It's quickly expanded into re-entry resources, anti-human trafficking resources, basic needs like food, clothing, furniture, housing, and family resources are now on relink.org, and relink.org is used by thousands of Ohioans every day. We saw the initial problem as just people in need, and there's a lot of resources available, but it's sometimes hard to have them all in front of you. It's hard to know all the different options, and so relink.org was designed to help people have that power to find help, and our motto has always been 3 clicks in 3 seconds. As I just mentioned before, this is the categories of services that the database offers. And then family resources are also there as well. And relink.org is designed to be ridiculously simple to use, and we really hope it is that for everybody. You just enter your location. It can be your city, your zip code, your county, and you start searching for what you need, and you should be able to find several options really quickly. We're not going to go through a demo, but if anybody ever wants a demo, Bill Pica does a great job on that. Bill, you can put your email in the chat. People can reach out to you. That would be wonderful. And education is a big thing that we do at relink.org. Webinars like this are definitely one of our passions. We do have a few more webinars and webinar series in the works that we're planning. Our next webinar will be in the re-entry sphere. We're really going to talk to Lewis Fields and one other gentleman about addressing some of the root issues that prevent people from making lasting changes needed to successfully leave incarceration and return into society. If you've ever heard Lewis speak, he's really dynamic and really passionate. And we've been working several months now on a really heartbreaking series on familial human trafficking. It's going to be a 3-part series because of the content and the survivors involved, and really think this is going to be unbelievably informative. I know I've been shocked at what I've been learning. And then we have some addiction recovery webinars coming up in 2023 focused around the drug courts. So, and Rachel is our coordinator for those. If anyone has wants any more information on those or wants to participate, please reach out to Rachel. All right, without further ado, again, I thank you all for joining us, and I'm really excited to have met Leslie and introduce her with NAMI. I think most of y'all are probably familiar with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health, which is the largest grassroots mental health group in the United States. Learning, it's grown tremendously and has an incredible impact. Leslie joins us from the Summit County branch, and she will be speaking first. I'm going to go ahead and introduce both speakers right now, and then we'll just flow from one to the other during the presentation today. And then we're also really privileged to have Chantelle Smith with us as well. She is a peer support specialist and a NAMI trained presenter. And we're really excited to hear about her personal journey with the foster care system and the mental health struggles and how she navigated through all that. I think that practical story will be extremely helpful. So Leslie and Chantelle, I thank you both for being here. Leslie, I'm going to stop my share and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for having us. I am going to now attempt to share my screen. All righty.
We can see it.
Okay. Let's see if I can get back to the start here. I was going over my PowerPoint before I hopped on, so I'm right in the middle of it. All right. So I always like to start out with this slide about what these individuals have in common. And obviously we're not real interactive right now because this is a webinar. So I will give you the answer. And that is that they are all had a mental health diagnosis or were thought to have had some kind of mental health condition. The significance of that is that these individuals, while they had a diagnosis or they had an illness, they contributed so much to our society. You look at Howard Hughes, you look at Teddy Roosevelt, Robin Williams, Mark Twain, Kurt Cobain, Charlie Pride. All of these people either are known or thought to have lived with a mental health condition. And so they thrived in spite of that condition, and they contributed to society because of that. So obviously we are support, education, and advocacy, and we have always fought against the stigma that goes along with a mental health diagnosis, and that is part of what NAMI does. We are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and like Barbara said, we are the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. A little bit of statistics. 1 in 5 adults in the United States experience a mental illness in the average year. Now, since the pandemic, we have 1 in 3 adults reporting experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression. So that's a very recent statistic in the last year or two. These statistics are pre-pandemic, but very, very pertinent to what we're going to be discussing. 70% of youth in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosed mental illness, 70%. 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. 50% of those do not receive any treatment at all, 50%. High school students are twice as likely to drop out if they have depression compared to their peers. 17% of high school students seriously consider suicide. And again, these are pre-pandemic statistics. Half of all lifetime cases of mental health condition begin by the age of 14. By the age of 24, 75% of all lifetime cases people will have experienced those symptoms and been diagnosed with that mental health condition. So where are we now? In February and March of 2021, ER visits for suspected suicide attempts were up 51% for adolescent girls, the ages of 12 to 17. So the prior statistic that we were just looking at, that 17% of high school students that seriously consider suicide, we have those suspected suicide attempts up 51% from those prior statistics. 74.9% of people age 18 to 24, young adults, reported at least one mental health or substance abuse concern. 8 in 10 college students, 83% reported feelings of significant anxiety or stress at the start of the fall 2021 semester. 1 in 15 US adults experienced both a substance abuse disorder and a mental illness. So a lot of times we see those two things co-occurring, especially when you're talking about serious mental illness, severe persistent mental illness. So those diagnoses are, you've probably heard bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia. So those, we see that quite a bit in those disorders. Again, in 2020, 1 in 15 overall US adults experienced both a substance abuse disorder and a mental illness. 12 plus million US adults had serious thoughts of suicide. 1 in 5 reported that the pandemic had a significant negative impact on their mental illness. And what went along with the pandemic? Well, obviously, it was the concern over where is this coming from? It was the complete shutdown of the world as we knew around it, not just not being able to go to work any longer, but not being able to go to the grocery store, only going to the grocery store on certain days. The lack of travel, the lack of commuting, the lack of seeing one another, that whole social isolation that we all experienced. Thank goodness for the technology that we have today, because could you imagine 2 years of a pandemic where we weren't able to conduct business via Zoom or conference calls, or were able to pick up the phone and see our loved ones through FaceTime or some other technological advancement? So we're lucky to have those things. They definitely impact people from a social perspective, from a mental health perspective. We'll get into that in a little bit. However, I think we were very, very fortunate. This is just my personal opinion, to be able to share, be able to see somebody's face, at least on a screen, because we couldn't see them in person. So because of all of this, on October 19th of 2021, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Children's Hospital Association, together representing more than 77,000 physician members and more than 200 children's hospitals, declared a national state emergency in child and adolescent mental health. And they called on policymakers to join them. And these statistics, again, go back to what we were just talking about. 24% of children ages 5 to 11 and 31% of children ages 12 to 17 suffered mental health emergencies. What's a mental health emergency? Suspected suicide attempt, suspected self-harm, and 50%, there was a 50% increase in suspected suicide attempt at the emergency departments. And in girls ages 12 to 17 in early 2021, as compared to the same period in 2019, which was obviously pre-pandemic. Additionally, many people, so we talked about that social impact, the isolation and all of that went along with the pandemic. But remember, thousands of people lost loved ones during the pandemic, thousands of people, including myself. So imagine dealing with that grief in isolation, having lost somebody that you've loved to this pandemic that has caused worldwide isolation and worldwide fear. Now we're going to jump ahead. These are statistics that just came out of a very recent meaning this summer, survey that was taken by NAMI. And you can go on our website, NAMI.org, and read about the background and statistically how many people responded, et cetera, and some of the background information that went on behind it. And Bill might be particularly interested in all of that. But this was a survey of teens themselves. 64% of teens, again, we're talking this summer, felt that the world was more stressful now than when their parents were our age. 1 in 6 reported experiencing significant negative emotions all the time or often. So I'm so sorry. And I am, oops, bear with me just a second. All right. Teens want schools to play a big role in their mental health. This again, right from them. They trust the information that they're getting from their schools, and they are open to receiving the information from the schools. More than 2 in 3 agree that schools should teach about what mental health is. And I don't know if you're aware, but last year, the administration, the Ohio's administration, the legislative body, together with Governor DeWine, put together an entire package geared towards mental health education in the school system, which is phenomenal. 56% say their school thinks that mental health matters. And I'm going to see if I can't. There we go. I couldn't move this out of the way. And 67% think that schools should offer days off for mental health. There was actually a petition that went around, and some legislation that went on surrounding behind that. We get sick days for, fever, cough, whatnot, when it comes to our bodies, but we don't get those mental health days that I think everybody knows. And what happens when your mental health is impaired? It affects physical health as well. And we'll get into that in a minute. Oops. So teens are comfortable talking about mental health, but they often don't start the conversation. And again, this comes from teens themselves. Among those who have sought information about mental health, 95% trust their parents. Pretty often, 95%. And if any of you have teenagers, I found that statistic pretty significant. 80% trust their teachers, and 78% trust their friends. So the information that they're getting from them, they trust. 34% seek mental health information from their parents, 18% from their friends, and 7% from teachers or trusted adults. 6% from social media. Among those who have sought information about mental health, 95% trust their parents, 80% trust the teachers, and 78% trust their friends. So pretty similar. So we talked about the effects of your mental health on your physical health. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the study, the ACEs study, which is adverse childhood experiences. So where do mental health conditions come from? We don't know where they all come from. They're very difficult to diagnose. It relies primarily on self-report to mental health providers to be able to ascertain what are those symptoms and be able to apply a diagnosis to those symptoms. What we do know is that there are components of mental illness that are biological, and there are components that are because of the surroundings, because of your experiences, because of what you grew up with. So several years ago, there was a study done by Kaiser Permanente out of California. And this study was not done to focus on mental health. It was really where are some of these chronic conditions in adults coming from? And so they started asking questions going back to childhood. And what they found was what is now called the Adverse Childhood Experiences study that focuses on experiencing in childhood from ages 0 to 17, violence, abuse, neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, having a family member that attempted or died by suicide, substance use problems, mental health problems at home, instability due to parental separation or household members being in jail or prison. So all of these things, people answered, yes, I had those, I had those, I had those. And the more ticks of those boxes, the more likely they were to have chronic health problems, both mental illness, substance abuse problems, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, those types of things. So how do they relate to chronic stress? We're talking about chronic stress. We're talking about something that is impacting the body over and over and over again. Similar to when you keep revving that engine of the car over and over and over again, it wears and tears on the body. It's that toxic stress that goes along with it. What we found also is that we can reduce the effects of ACEs and toxic stress by helping people as they're after the effect, but primarily we want to focus on addressing those toxic stressors as they're happening or before they're happening in that 0 to 17 age. So what we've also found is just because you've experienced ACEs or that toxic stress, you are not doomed to a lifetime of mental health problems or chronic problems, but those things do need to be addressed. And so, as they stated in Harvard University in this developing child, you'll see this, and this comes from Harvard University as well as Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. No one who's experiencing a significant adverse childhood, ACEs, is irreparably damaged. There are lots and lots of mental health programs for addressing those traumas. And we talk about traumas, not just in those ACEs, but think about, again, what went on during the pandemic. Not only did we have the pandemic and that isolation, but we had all types of different things happening all over the country. We had the events of George Floyd, that horrid situation that arose from that. And so we talk about stressors that have come, systemic stressors, systemic harms that come to people through generational trauma. And by the way, I should note to all of you, and I should have done this on the outset, great attorney that I am, is that I am not a clinician. As you saw, I used to practice law. So any questions that you have that have to do with any particular diagnoses or anything like that, I'm probably not qualified to answer. So I will just give that caveat to you. NAMI's main focus is to, again, educate, but we consider ourselves the experts because we have lived with either the condition itself or we have experienced the condition through our family members. So, couple of symptoms, signs and symptoms of people that are experiencing mental health problems, stressors, trauma. We talk about social withdrawal, sitting and doing nothing for long periods of time, loss of interest in friends, feeling self-centered or self-absorbed, dropping out of previously enjoyed activities, declining in your academic work or athletic performance, irregular expressions of feelings, hostility, inability to experience joy, lack of laughter, that type of thing. Mood disturbances, particularly those that last more than 2 weeks or more. Depression lasting longer than 2 weeks. Loss of interest in activities, we said that above. Thinking about or talking about suicide. It is a misnomer to say to someone, are you thinking about harming yourself? are you thinking about suicide, as a question that may prompt someone to follow through with that act. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If we can get people to open up about those feelings, we can get them help. So changes in behavior, extremes in behavior, lack of personal hygiene, sleeping too much or not enough, eating too much or not enough, sexual promiscuity, involvement in automobile accidents, particularly where there was negligence involved, drug or alcohol abuse, we see quite a bit, thought disturbances, seeing or hearing things that are not there, paranoia, suspiciousness. These are all signs and symptoms of somebody that could be experiencing a mental health condition. If we're talking about suicide, if they're talking about suicide, if you're seeing signs and symptoms of somebody with a plan, if they express that, yes, in fact, they're thinking of that, they have suicidal ideation, which is what we call thinking about suicide, contemplating suicide, those are emergency situations. That is a 911 situation. That is when you do not leave that person alone, and we get them help. All right. My screen's not moving. I think it likes this bar down a little further. For some reason I'm frozen. Bear with me, guys. There we go. So one of the ways that our administration, Ohio, helps supplement our mental health resources is through Ohio Rise. And this program, it addresses resilience through integrated system of excellence. And there are seminars after seminars after seminars that go into the formulation of this idea. But suffice to say, it is full wraparound services for children who require significant behavioral health treatment. So those people that are in crisis. It's being administered right now through Aetna. It is for people who are eligible, or for children who are eligible for Ohio Medicaid, either managed care or fee for service, 0 to age 20. And they will receive a CANS assessment, which is a child and adolescent needs and strengths assessment. It is not even necessarily conducted, that assessment, by a licensed practitioner. They are trained people to do this assessment, and if they are referred, they can then receive those Ohio Rise services that you see down in the lower right-hand corner, full wraparound services in addition to what they're already receiving in the community. Bear with me just a second. Again, it wants this bar down here. See if not, there we go. The other way to look for resources is to go to our NAMI.org, and there's a whole page on youth and young adult resources. And one of the things NAMI did just last year was create this little coloring book, because mental health just doesn't start, or mental health conditions don't just start in middle school or high school or college. Even though, as we talked about, 50% are diagnosed by the age of 14, they start young. So let's talk to our kids about mental health conditions, about their feelings, about what they're feeling, about how their day went. And this coloring book is meant to kind of start that conversation with little ones. NAMI also has a full chart, and this is available on the website for download. It talks about statistics. It talks about how to talk to somebody and tell somebody that they're worried, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what to keep in mind. And, first of all, you want to rule out physical conditions. And you want to be honest about what you're feeling and be clear about what you want. So that's what you can do as a youth, age 6 to 17, is what this particular PDF was formulated for. We talk about our language and that our language matters. We talk about not saying that somebody is a schizophrenic, rather that they are living with a diagnosis of schizophrenia, that a person has, oops, skipped it again. Bear with me, I'm moving some bars around on here. Using lives with or has experience with rather than suffers with or afflicted by or mentally ill, or some of that more stigmatizing language. So we can say, for example, suicide attempt or attempted suicide rather than failed suicide or an unsuccessful attempt. Successful or completed suicide. And the reason we say this is because many people who are survivors of suicide feel that when you say you attempted suicide or completed suicide or I've changed my language so much I can't even think of committed suicide is what I was going for, that those terms are really feed as a criminal action rather than somebody who is in deep emotional pain. So I'm going to stop right here. I have a couple more slides, but I really want Chantelle to be able to share her story and tell you guys a little bit about how her path has taken her to a peer support specialist and also to working with Youth Move. So I'm going to mute myself. I am going to, at this point, stop sharing my screen so you can all see Chantelle and I.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I mean, that was excellent information. Those statistics are, man, they're staggering and they're heartbreaking. And I really appreciate you being here for this really important topic. I think it's one of probably several or many we need to have over time. So thank you so much for that. Chantelle, thank you also for being here. We want to turn it over to you to hear personally from you and your story.
Thank you once again for this opportunity. Hi everyone, my name is Chantelle Smith. I am married now, so I do go by Lewis as well. So just so there's no confusion. Man, I have definitely endured a lot, and I like to share my story to kind of put a face to the facts and the statistics. It's easier to disassociate or to kind of separate ourselves when we just see words on the screen, but when you hear someone's story or you see someone's face, a lot of times I get a lot of responses after I share my story. People are like, I can relate to that. And people who I wouldn't think, could relate do, and they're actually touched by what I've been through. So I like to say that my pain has a purpose. And I never share my story for fame or anything. I do it to encourage someone else that who's been through similar difficult situations, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that I personally believe as long as you have breath in your lungs, that there is an opportunity for hope and for change. So with that, I will share my story. So throughout my life, I've experienced many forms of abuse, such as physical, emotional, sexual, and mental abuse. Around the age of 6, I was removed from my home and placed in foster care, where I remained until the age of 16. Throughout my life, I have been moved more times than I can keep track of. I struggled with feeling alone, abandoned, rejected. I struggled with feelings of depression and also had suicidal thoughts. Around the ages of 10 to 13, I was placed with extended family. where I was safe. And what I meant by that is before I was placed with extended family, I was placed in several foster homes and also removed from my mother due to abuse. Physical child abuse was the main issue that I was removed. And a lot of times I didn't really know what mental health was. So my brain kind of went into survivor mode. So when I was placed with my extended family and I was safe and I was secure, I was fed, I was loved, my brain was like, okay, time to exit out of survivor mode and just kind of send this wave of emotions, pretty much like saying it's time to deal with everything you were feeling when you weren't in a safe situation. And so I didn't really know how to express it. It was so overwhelming that I just began to act out. And I was a pretty good kid and no one could understand what was going on. And eventually that did lead to me being involved in the juvenile justice system for almost a month, I believe. After that, I was released, and that same day, my extended family revoked their guardianship rights. So then I was placed into a all-girls shelter. And I stayed there until I was placed in a private-based group home. And I remained there until the age of 16. I also used many different tools and resources throughout my mental health journey, such as books. I love to read, and when I was younger, it was a safe way to escape reality. I also love listening to music. I always say when words fail, music speaks. Also, I like to sing, so that helped me to use my voice. And I also would play different instruments. I had many different supportive groups. And last but not least, my faith was very, very important during my mental health recovery journey. I never gave up faith. I never gave up hope. And I was just always encouraged and loved by so many different supportive groups. I have a chosen family now who consists of people I met through foster care. I have a chosen sister. We've been friends since I was about 12 or 13. And I'm now we're just family, honestly. I go see her from time to time. I still am in contact with former foster parents and so forth. So they were the really ones who were really encouraging and helpful to kind of help me see that I was not a burden, I was not a problem, that I just went through a lot of things that I really couldn't handle, but that didn't make me a bad kid and that didn't make me a bad person. So after all that I've been through, I am a survivor. I'm not a victim. I am currently an advocate for mental health because of my passion for others to get a better understanding on what mental health is and just to know that they're not alone. I am happily married. I am a stepmom. I am the oldest sibling to I'm the oldest sister to my 4 siblings, sorry. I am also a peer leader, a Zoom facilitator, a youth presenter, also for NAMI Ending the Silence and In Our Own Voice and multiple other classes. I just got my certification to be a certified youth peer supporter, I want to say back in May. And I'm also a part of a wonderful organization called Youth Move Ohio, which the MOVE stands for Motivating Others Through Voices of Experience. We are a group of young leaders between the ages of 14 to 30. We represent multi-systems and various lived experiences. We work to improve systems and services for youth around Ohio through advocacy, education, community service, and peer support. Overall, we share our difficult lived experiences to make the future better for those children who are still in those difficult situations. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Chantelle, thank you so much for being with us. I really loved your story. I love the way you shared about hope. I know I have a few questions, but I really want to hear from everybody. If you do have questions, please type them into the chat. There was a comment in here about Chantelle, your incredible resilience. Can you speak to that a little bit? And I guess in that too, I mean, I feel like you're like a teacher. I feel like you're already giving advice and encouragement, but what advice, explain a little bit about your resilience and what advice you would give to either families or people that are going through similar situations.
So with my resilience, I used to say what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, but now I realize that's a really bad quote, honestly. I don't know really how to explain it better than this. There's so much negativity. There's so many bad things that are happening in the world. And despite everything that I've been through, I didn't want to add to that darkness. I didn't want to be like, oh, my pain is a reason to be cold to others. There were times, yes, that I isolated myself, and that was for my own self-healing journey. Yet I did always reach back out to those people and explain like, hey, it was not you, it was me. I just needed time for myself. So honestly, having also really healthy, different various support groups, including friends and church homes. And as I said, chosen family. A lot of times I used to think of family as just being your birth family. And although I have good communication with some of my birth family members, I do not have great communication with all of them, and that's okay. I've established healthy boundaries and I love them from a distance, and yet I do appreciate my chosen family and their support. My advice to those who are helping young kids, young adults, is just be patient. We've been through a lot, and even though I'm sitting here sharing my story for God knows how many times, it's still really emotional for me, and I still get nervous and so forth. And it takes a lot for us to be able to trust someone after we've been through a lot, honestly. So I would just say, be patient, continue to be honest, and really show that you care. Like, there are former even caseworkers that I remember, like one or two, or even a guardian ad litem, who just kind of went above their pay grade per se, just to kind of show that, hey, like, you're not just a caseload, you're not just another number. You really do matter to me. And that really meant a lot to me. It's just to kind of to show that, hey, even though I only know you through this situation or because of the court or so forth, doesn't mean that I have to just treat you like you're just another task off my list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes great sense. And I think that's great advice. Thank you so much. I apologize, everybody, that the chat's disabled. I don't see a way to undisable it. I can do it, so that doesn't do any good. So please use the question and answer feature, the Q&A button in your taskbar to ask any questions. I would remedy that, but I don't know how, so I apologize. There are a couple of questions in here, kind of on the lines of that. Many people are thanking you for your story, Chantelle, and I echo that. We thank you so much. What do y'all, this could be for Leslie too, and Chantelle, what do you think may be lacking still when it comes to helping youth address mental health challenges? It's very encouraging to hear what's happening with NAMI, what's happening here in Summit County, what's happening with RISE Ohio. Given the extent of the problem though, what do you still see as maybe lacking?
I can tell you from my perspective, I sit through meetings weekly where we talk about the shortage of mental health professionals, trying to encourage people to go into the field. They are notoriously underpaid, and it's really, really tough work. So very high turnover. That's one of our big challenges right now. Child psychiatry, psychiatric nurse practitioners, the wait list now to get into treatment for somebody who is not at an acute level is months. So we need to address that. That's some of the shortages, the shortfall. I also believe that we need to start addressing mental health at very young ages, preschool, elementary school age. They need to be able to express their feelings, what they're feeling. They don't know what they're feeling a lot of times. A lot of times it comes out as temper tantrums, as anger, as very emotional, but it's because they're unable to express what they're feeling. So, addressing those things, teaching those things, those education things. So those are just a couple of things that I would say.
And
No,
I'm
that's
just gonna-
great. Go ahead,
oh,
Chantelle.
sorry. I was going to quickly piggyback. Really listening. And I know a lot of times I experienced throughout the different systems and so forth was if I did report that something was going wonky in a foster home where the parent was being abusive, I was not taken seriously. I was told I was just getting I was just acting out for attention, or I was just saying stuff, I was lying. A lot of times youth voices are silent, which is why I share my story. Also briefly, when I was in foster care and the time came for my mom to receive custody of me again, we went through multiple courts, and I had an advocate and a guardian ad litem and all these different people who were supposed to advocate for me. And yet I was 16 at the time. And all I said was, I just want to go home with my mom. It's about to be prom season. Everyone's going prom dress shopping with their mom. I just want to do that with my mom. Like, I want to be home. I think it's finally time to go home. Granted, I was like, I do want to do counseling with her. Like, I'm not going to just jump back into a situation blinded, yet I want to go home. And every time court would happen, I was not allowed to go, but I had people who would speak for me. And then the motion would come back and I'm like, well, why are they saying this? Did you tell them what I said? And no one was telling them what I said. And at that point I began to become frustrated, and I told my foster parents, and they were like, why don't you write a letter to the judge? At the time, that was Linda Teodosio. And I wrote a letter just kind of explaining, like, none of these people are advocating for what I want. And she listened, and we actually were able to have a one-on-one meeting in her office, no guards, nothing. And she was like, I just want to hear what you have to say. And I was like, I just want to go home. And I pretty much said, about the prom thing and everything. I was like, I want to go home. And she granted that. And that meant a huge thing for me. I was like, wow, finally an adult who's listening. Granted, there were others who were listening, but a lot of times involving multi-systems, not everyone is able to communicate. Not everyone's getting the same information. A lot of times I had to repeat a lot of things, whether that was getting a new case manager or a therapist or so forth. And that became very frustrating because everyone was claiming that they knew what was best for me. And I was like, no, you don't. I know what's best for me at this moment. And I just really wish people would have listened more. So I would say, really listen. Or if the child is acting out, don't just write them off as, oh, they're acting out. No, those are red flags. Those are signals that something is going on, and they need somebody to look past the behavior and see the person for who they are. Don't write them off as a bad child. I've also experienced as being a former daycare teacher, so I definitely experienced that as well. And I was able to connect with those kids actually better and be like, hey, okay, I'm looking past your behavior, what's going on? And a lot of times, piggybacking on what Leslie said, because like they were in preschool or pre-K, and they were like, stuff is going on at home and I don't know how to handle it, and this is why I'm acting out. And I was able to kind of create a little mini system that kind of worked for them so they could start to express their feelings and emotions in a more healthy way. So that's what I would share.
Thank you both. That listening, that is a theme we're hearing across different webinars, and it's so important. And I think people don't realize that they want to help, they're trying to help, but we're really not listening. And I think that's really, really important. Thank you. There's another question in here. This, I think an easy one for you, Chantelle. You mentioned the MOVE organization. Is there a contact person or some information you can share about that? There's people interested in that organization.
Well, depending on how level of contact, I mean, I am also a part of that. I've been part of that for 2 years. If you want someone higher than me, like my boss, I could definitely add her information in there as well. We also have a website, youthmoveohio.org. I could put in the chat.
Well, and if the chat's disabled, put it in the
Okay.
Q&A session and I can copy and paste it in that. I can put it in there.
Okay, how do I
I don't
do
know why Zoom is always very fun for me. I've never had the chat be disabled though. That's a new one.
I don't know how to do that unless I just answer someone's question.
Yeah, you can do that.
You can do that. Go ahead and
Yeah.
do that. Go ahead and answer. That will be great. That will be perfect.
Awesome, thank you.
There's another question in here too for you, Chantelle, that well, you're multitasking there, typing and answering questions. How do people sign up to be a peer supporter, or what is involved in becoming a peer supporter? Because I can imagine that is needed and very vital.
So as of right now, thankfully, Ohio has now understood the importance of having a youth peer supporter because a lot of times youth who are in multi-serving systems, as I said, you know, kind of aren't able to use their voice, or sometimes don't feel comfortable if they've had bad experiences with adults to really open up and express what they're feeling. So I'm so grateful that Ohio now sees the importance behind it. We are you can go to the OMAS website, Ohio of Mental Health and Addiction Services, their website, and I would say go to Peer Supporter, and it would show that there are 16 e-based courses that you would take, and then also you would take a 40-hour training, which I also facilitate as well as with some other wonderful facilitators. You would then, after that, go to elicense.gov and set up an application. Of course, do a background check if you have not, what's the term? Yeah, just send a new background check to Ohio MOS. And if anyone has any other information, they're welcome to email me, Leslie, or I could give you the email, and I could definitely help you further through there. I hope that was helpful. Granted, certified youth peer support is to the age of 30, and then after that, they do have adult peer support. So I am a certified youth peer supporter. Just wanted to clarify.
And I think I even misread the question a little bit, but I liked your answer. I guess that was probably my question, is how do people become it? But also they want to know how to like sign up with you to have you help somebody. So I don't know if you want to put any information in the answer that question as well, or we can share information, but I always like to ask your permission before we do that. So
sure, yeah. Definitely we can definitely contact one another. Leslie, could you?
What you can do too is I can put my email in the chat. I think y'all can see my chat, and anyone can contact me and we can make connections. So we always want to follow up and help people connect in any way we can, you know, as appropriate. So
yes, I appreciate it.
My email is here, and everyone can email me, and I will do any connecting. Appreciate that. And one question in here I think is also real specific and good too. Where would y'all, and this can be for both, where would you recommend a 24-year-old go that has many of the sides that you listed, Leslie, in your presentation? It's kind of like a where do you start question. Does it go call NAMI, go to a center?
Yeah, we kind of help people navigate, family members as well as people that have the condition. We help them navigate the system. So depending on where they are in Ohio, NAMI Summit, I can help them navigate the area of mental health here. We have NAMIs all over the state. So if you're in Portage County or in Stark County or up in Cuyahoga County, their kind of specialty, their niche is obviously their own county. So if you're talking about a 24-year-old in Summit County, there are several different agencies that you can go to get a full assessment. I will say that a lot of our community-based care is able to see, I was talking about the long waits for children and in the different systems. But I have to say our community-based care system in Summit County is able to get people in and get them assessed within weeks, if not days. So yeah, absolutely call NAMI Summit County. Depending on what county you're in, I may refer you over to a different county to find that, find that particular information. But yes, give us a call. So if you take anything away from this webinar, call NAMI Summit County. We can put you in touch with Chantelle. We can put you in touch with treatment providers and help you navigate the system.
Yes, and just piggybacking, if you're just looking for support, honestly, as you navigate this in kind of like a peer group, Youth Move Ohio is a great thing. We have leaders from many different regions. I didn't get to state that. There's so much stuff that we do. Honestly, we have Zooms. We have in-person trainings in Columbus sometimes. It really just feels like a big family. And honestly, it's really just an encouraging, supportive group, and we're kind of learning as we go, and we implement, and we also do hire people like who would like to do more or have volunteers as well. So I know anytime kind of getting started, it's really important to find people who have similar lived experience. I was so excited when I found out and relieved that I was not the only one. And that it's much easier to have someone who can relate to you, even if it's not this exact same experience, but just that support. So that's also what Youth Move is for as well.
And thank you guys so much. We're coming up on the end of time, and I think we're out of questions. But one thing that is coming up, how many NAMI different branches are there in Ohio? And they're specifically asking about Franklin County and Cuyahoga County. And I was just curious how many there are total in Ohio.
Yeah, I think we're at 52 or 54 or something like that.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, we basically associate ourselves with whatever ADM board or Adams board is around. So there's a NAMI Greater Cleveland, which is Cuyahoga County. There's a NAMI Franklin County. Both of them are very, very active NAMIs. If you're in a rural area, sometimes you'll find a NAMI that is not staffed. They do offer programming, but you may be getting a volunteer. So it's what that person can put in and the time that they have. But if you're in one of the larger counties, Summit, Cuyahoga, down the Cincinnati area, I don't know the names of all the counties. Yeah, you can definitely find a NAMI there. If you go on NAMI.org, there you can just type in the box, find my NAMI. Or again, call NAMI Summit. I'd be happy to refer you to the person that you need to speak with at any of those counties.
Okay. Thank you both so much. This has been so informative. As we said, as we were preparing earlier, I always learn so much. I think I learn, the statistics are staggering and the need is immense. And I think this topic is just so important for our country, everyone's lives. Everyone is impacted by this, and it's just vital. I thank you guys for the work you're doing, and I thank you guys for taking time to be with us today. And thank you everybody for joining us. We will send a follow-up email. So everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Bill. We appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you for everyone listening to my story, and I hope you receive something from it. You guys have a great day.
Absolutely, Chantelle. Everyone was blessed by it. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.